in a sterile concrete interview room within a California state penitentiary in May 2018. Texas Ranger James Holland sits across from a 78-year-old man confined to a wheelchair. Months pass before this aging inmate, Samuel Little, sits in a holding cell in Texas with a box of chalk pastels and heavy textured paper. Investigators stand by in absolute silence as the frail drifter begins to draw. He creates striking portraits from pure memory, capturing distinct hairstyles, eye colors, and facial structures of women he encountered decades earlier. Beside the faces, he scrawls chilling annotations, noting specific interstate highways or the exact years these women vanished. Law enforcement officials recognize the terrifying truth unfolding on the paper. These are not abstract sketches born from imagination. They are hauntingly accurate depictions of unidentified victims from unsolved cold cases across the country, revealing a predator hiding an encyclopedic memory of endless loss. Before the chalk pastels struck the paper, Samuel Little traversed the United States as an invisible phantom between the years 1970 and 2005. He projected the demeanor of a harmless transient, fading into the background of bustling city streets and lonely stretches of rural asphalt. During this era, law enforcement agencies operated in isolated silos, lacking the interconnected digital databases that define modern detective work. A man could cross a county line, change his name, and leave his past behind without triggering a single alarm. Little exploited this massive systemic vulnerability, moving from the humid corners of Florida to the fog-drenched avenues of the Pacific Northwest. Police departments kept their records on physical paper, filing reports in dense cardboard boxes that gathered dust in basement archives. Detectives working a case in one jurisdiction possessed zero visibility into similar patterns occurring 50 miles away across a state border. This rigid reliance on localized record-keeping created an impenetrable blind spot. Transient offenders faced little risk of national tracking, walking through the massive gaps in a fractured justice system. The country offered endless highways, and the man behind the wheel carried a deep, hidden darkness beneath his ordinary exterior. Within this vast network of disconnected towns, Little hunted for women pushed to the fragile edges of society. He targeted individuals struggling with addiction, crushing poverty, and unstable housing situations in neighborhoods ignored by city officials. Under the glow of flickering sodium streetlights or amidst the peeling paint of forgotten motels, he offered rides, shared meals, or presented a sympathetic ear. He weaponized trust using his disarming, ordinary appearance to lower their defenses. Yet, beneath their difficult circumstances, these women lived as beloved daughters, caring mothers, and cherished sisters. They maintained specific daily routines, walking familiar blocks to buy morning coffee or checking in with local shelter workers. They held deep personal aspirations, dreaming of steady jobs, safe homes, and a return to their distant families. When they failed to return to their neighborhoods, the quiet tragedy of their absence rippled through their immediate circles. Mothers waited by silent telephones and children sat by front windows, hoping to see a familiar silhouette approach the driveway. Their loved ones carried the heavy burden of unending questions, staring down decades of agonizing uncertainty. The broader public and under-resourced police departments dismissed these disappearances. Desk sergeants and patrol officers wrote off the missing women as runaways, assuming they had packed up and moved to another city. Complex jurisdictional conflicts compounded the tragedy, as city police and county sheriffs argued over which department held responsibility for investigating a transient person. Rigid protocols dictated that without physical evidence of foul play, officers could not initiate formal searches, leaving the cases stalled at the very first step. A missing person report filed in one precinct never reached the detectives working unsolved mysteries in the neighboring district. This systemic apathy allowed a prolific predator to slip away time and time again. Investigators possessed the pieces of a massive puzzle, but lacked the institutional framework to assemble them. The broken system communicated a silent, devastating message to the grieving families that the lives of their loved ones held no value in the eyes of the law. Decades slipped by while the boxes of files remained sealed in cold evidence rooms. The shadow of an unseen perpetrator loomed over countless communities, waiting for a single thread of modern science to unravel his elaborate deception. The impenetrable facade surrounding the aging drifter began to fracture on September 5, 2012. The physical setting of his downfall materialized at a modest homeless shelter in the urban center of Louisville, Kentucky. Local patrol officers arrived at the facility responding to a routine check, scanning the faces of the transient population seeking refuge from the late summer heat. They ran the name of a 72-year-old man through their local dispatch system, seeking any outstanding legal issues. The dispatch terminal flashed with an active, unrelated narcotics warrant originating from a jurisdiction thousands of miles away. Officers placed the elderly man in handcuffs, treating the interaction as a standard apprehension of a low-level nuisance offender. The rigid legal machinery of extradition took control of his fate, loading him onto a secure transport bound for the West Coast. He arrived at a bustling detention center in California, facing a bureaucratic intake process designed to catalog endless streams of inmates. Jail personnel mandated the collection of biological samples, swabbing the inside of his cheek to update his profile in a sprawling national database. He offered no resistance, assuming his long history of evading consequences would protect him once again. Deep inside the headquarters of the Los Angeles Police Department, Detective Mitzi Roberts monitored the incoming data streams from the State Crime Lab. Her cold case unit focused on extracting answers from old, degraded physical evidence preserved in temperature-controlled vaults. Technicians processed the fresh biological sample taken from the elderly transient in the booking facility and fed the genetic markers into the central computer network. The system hummed through millions of existing records, searching for identical sequences of nucleotide base pairs. A notification shattered the quiet routine of the precinct, signaling a massive, unexpected forensic match. The genetic profile from the man in the county jail aligned with exact precision to biological material extracted from 3 long dormant crime scenes. Detective Roberts stared at the screen, analyzing a connection that defied all initial assumptions about the frail suspect. The computer linked the new sample to a series of brutal events committed between the years 1987 and 1989. This incontrovertible scientific link shattered the suspect's carefully constructed image as a harmless wanderer. The undeniable truth emerged from the sterile data, presenting investigators with a terrifying new reality. The 3 historic cases tied to this genetic match represented immense sorrow for the local community. The victims, Carol Elford, Guadalupe Abadica, and Audrey Nelson, had vanished from the streets of Los Angeles decades prior, leaving behind shattered families and stagnant police files. Their final moments played out in desolate alleyways and abandoned lots far removed from the public eye. Detectives recognized that these women possessed zero connection to the suspect's recent transient life in the state of Kentucky. The geographical span and the vast expanse of time between the offenses pointed to a calculated, methodical pattern of behavior. Detective Roberts and her specialized team initiated a complete reevaluation of the man sitting in the holding cell. They pulled his entire criminal history, scouring arrest records from dozens of states spanning half a century. A chilling pattern of assaults, minor infractions, and sudden departures from various cities emerged from the scattered paperwork. The investigators realized they did not hold a simple narcotics offender in their custody. They stared at a highly lethal predator who had weaponized the vast American highway system to cover his tracks for a lifetime. Inside the heavy oak doors of a Los Angeles County courtroom in the fall of 2014, the aging drifter faced the weight of his actions. Detective Mitzi Roberts sat in the gallery, watching the 74-year-old defendant slouch in his chair with a mask of absolute indifference. The prosecution presented the undeniable genetic links extracted from the cold case evidence vaults. Prosecutors laid out the precise timeline of the grim discoveries in the late 1980s, anchoring the scientific data to the vanished lives of the 3 local women. The defense attempted to dismiss the biological match, but the physical reality of the genetic sequence left no room for legal maneuvering. After reviewing the forensic documentation, the jury returned a definitive verdict of guilty on all charges. The presiding judge sentenced the predator to 3 consecutive terms of life behind bars without the possibility of parole. Heavy steel chains rattled around the wrists of the convicted man as deputies escorted him toward the transport vans idling in the concrete loading bay. The solid cell doors of a California state penitentiary finally locked him away from society. Yet, the investigators walking out of the courthouse felt a deep, unsettling intuition gnawing at their conscience. They recognized the stark contrast between his advanced age and the short 3-year window of the proven offenses. The detectives understood that a predator possessing such refined methods did not simply begin and end his destructive path within a single Los Angeles zip code. The true scale of his unseen destruction lay hidden beneath decades of catastrophic systemic failures and institutional neglect. Across the country, deep within the sterile, fluorescent lit examination rooms of county morgues, medical professionals repeatedly misread the grim signs of violence. Coroners examining the remains of transient women documented their passing as accidental drug overdoses or natural physiological failures. These officials focused entirely on the toxicology reports showing narcotics in the bloodstream, willfully ignoring the faint physical trauma on the necks of the victims. This rigid reliance on preliminary chemical tests created a devastating legal loophole. Because the medical examiners refused to classify these events as intentional acts of malice, patrol officers never forwarded the files to the homicide divisions. The cases hit an immediate bureaucratic dead end. Missing persons reports languished in overflowing filing cabinets, categorized as runaway adults lacking the mandatory proof of foul play required to open an active investigation. The system demanded concrete evidence of an attack. Yet, the very officials responsible for identifying that evidence consistently looked the other way. This staggering institutional apathy granted the predator a terrifying invisibility cloak. He moved through the shadows of marginalized communities, fully aware that the local authorities would dismiss the sudden absences of his targets. The bureaucratic misclassification erased the suffering of the victims, denying their families the basic dignity of a formal police inquiry. This profound institutional bias had shielded the predator during his earliest encounters with the justice system in the early 1980s. Long before the Los Angeles conviction, local authorities in states like Mississippi and Florida apprehended the drifter on suspicion of brutal attacks. Detectives placed him inside dimly lit interrogation rooms, confronting him with the testimonies of women who had narrowly survived his grasp. Prosecutors brought these cases before grand juries and trial judges in humid wood-paneled southern courtrooms. However, defense attorneys weaponized the personal struggles of the surviving witnesses to dismantle the state cases. Lawyers highlighted the survivors' histories of addiction and unstable housing, urging the juries to view their harrowing accounts as unreliable fabrications. The rigid legal framework of the era lacked the modern understanding of trauma, allowing defense teams to destroy the credibility of vulnerable women. In the absence of definitive forensic evidence like genetic material or high-resolution security footage, the juries consistently sided with the charming, well-spoken defendant. Judges handed down acquittals or authorized absurdly minimal sentences for lesser charges. The predator walked out of the heavy courthouse doors time and time again, inhaling the free air with an arrogant sense of invincibility. He viewed the criminal justice system as a weak, easily manipulated machine operated by gullible officials. Every failed prosecution reinforced his belief that society did not care about the women he targeted, emboldening him to escalate his dark crusade across the interstate highways. The impenetrable wall surrounding his past finally began to crack under the scrutiny of modern analytical intelligence in early 2018, 2,500 miles away from the California prison. Inside a secure facility in Quantico, Virginia, analysts stared at glowing computer monitors. Federal Bureau of Investigation crime analyst Christy Polidoro and Department of Justice Senior Policy Advisor Angela Williamson initiated a comprehensive review of cold cases. They accessed the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program database, a centralized digital network designed to catch the very patterns ignored decades prior. The two specialists began mapping the massive volume of unsolved cases involving marginalized women found along major interstate corridors. They cross-referenced these forgotten files with a meticulously reconstructed timeline of the convicted drifters' historic travel records. The investigators pulled decades of old traffic citations, petty theft arrests, and employment forms from scattered municipal archives. A terrifying geographical overlap materialized on the digital maps displayed across their screens. Every time the aging inmate had passed through a specific town in Texas, Ohio, or Georgia, a local woman had met a permanent tragic end during that exact window of time. The sheer volume of corresponding dates and locations eliminated any possibility of mathematical coincidence. Polidoro and Williamson recognized they were tracking a continuous cross-country trail of destruction spanning over 30 years. To dismantle this unprecedented network of cold cases, the federal analysts required the expertise of an investigator capable of extracting the truth from a master manipulator. The federal team reached out to Texas Ranger James Holland, a seasoned law enforcement veteran renowned for his specialized interview techniques. Holland possessed a distinct ability to disarm hostile suspects, utilizing a calm conversational approach rather than aggressive confrontation. In May 2018, Holland flew to the West Coast and entered the sprawling concrete complex of the California State Prison System. He walked through a series of heavy reinforced steel doors, navigating the echoing corridors to reach a stark, windowless interview room. The Texas Ranger took a seat across a bolted metal table from the 78-year-old inmate confined to a specialized medical wheelchair. Holland understood that demanding immediate confessions from a man possessing absolute control over his secrets would result in another locked door. Instead, the investigator initiated a deliberate psychological dialogue centered on building an illusion of mutual respect. He offered the inmate small comforts, providing specialized snacks and engaging in casual conversations about his favorite brands of soda. Holland stroked the immense ego of the predator, validating his intelligence and portraying him as a misunderstood figure of historical significance. The aging drifter, starved for an audience and facing the reality of dying in a California medical ward, began to lower his defensive barriers. He tested the waters by dropping vague hints about distant highways and forgotten cities, waiting to see if the investigator would judge him. Holland maintained an unwavering expression of intense, non-judgmental curiosity, perfectly setting the trap that would soon release a flood of long-buried horrors. Inside the sterile walls of the California medical ward, the aging inmate recognized his last opportunity for control. He hated the cold environment of the West Coast Penitentiary and presented Texas Ranger James Holland with a rigid demand. He offered absolute cooperation in exchange for a permanent transfer to a detention facility in the state of Texas. Holland accepted the terms without hesitation. Authorities loaded the wheelchair-bound man onto a secure transport flight bound for the southern plains. Guards wheeled him into an isolated interrogation room inside the Wise County Jail. The physical space measured merely 10 feet across, with a single metal table separating the predator from the investigator. The confessions began at that moment. The words poured from his mouth in a steady, unending stream. He recounted 93 separate acts of permanent destruction. His dark geographic map spanned 19 states. The timeline covered more than 3 decades of hidden terror. The scope of his actions defied logic and shattered all existing criminal records. The sheer volume of the confession stunned the seasoned law enforcement officials in the room. Holland realized verbal accounts lacked the specific identifiers needed to solve decades-old missing persons cases. The investigator left the concrete room and returned with a box of chalk, pastels, and heavy art paper. He placed the supplies into the hands of the 78-year-old drifter. The frail man leaned over the desk and pressed the chalk against the coarse grain of the paper. A chilling transformation occurred in that confined space. The elderly facade vanished, revealing an encyclopedic memory of terror. He drew the exact facial structures of the women he targeted. He shaded distinct eye colors and sketched specific hairstyles from the 1970s and 1980s. He recalled the precise weather patterns during their final hours. He detailed the exact make and model of the vehicles he drove. He annotated the margins of the paper with specific highway markers. The terrifying accuracy proved he had cataloged every stolen life within his mind. Investigators possessed a gallery of ghosts demanding identification. The Federal Bureau of Investigation took possession of the physical artwork for a massive national initiative. Technicians scanned the vivid portraits into their central database. They broadcast the haunting images across national media networks and official government websites. The digital transmission reached millions of screens in living rooms across the country. The public release generated a massive shock wave of realization. Local detectives stared at the faces and recognized the features from stagnant case files gathering dust in basement archives. Grieving family members clicked on the links and saw the undeniable likenesses of their missing daughters. Decades of agonizing uncertainty shattered in an instant. Law enforcement agencies flooded the telephone lines at the Texas Command Center. They matched the handwritten annotations regarding forgotten dirt roads to the exact locations of historical crime scenes. The predator had hidden in plain sight for a lifetime. The system exposed the true magnitude of his deception. The elaborate facade crumbled under the weight of the undeniable truth. The Central Intelligence Unit of the Federal Bureau of Investigation initiated a massive verification process. Analysts sifted through thousands of archival documents to corroborate the details provided in the Texas interrogation room. The federal agency verified 60 of the 93 confessions with hard scientific and historical evidence. This staggering mathematical total cemented Samuel Little as the most prolific serial offender in the history of the United States. The undeniable proof forced a reckoning within the halls of American law enforcement. Police departments across the nation had to confront their historical treatment of vulnerable citizens. Commanders acknowledged the catastrophic systemic failures of the past. Rigid jurisdictional boundaries and deep institutional biases had protected a predator while discarding the lives of those struggling on the margins of society. The system had abandoned these women, dismissing their absences as trivial matters. The newly verified case files proved these victims were never anonymous statistics. They were targeted individuals whose disappearances warranted massive responses from the authorities. The art gallery of stolen lives stripped away all previous excuses. The justice system faced the undeniable reality of its own neglect. The scale of the negligence became a permanent historical record. The official confirmation brought an unprecedented wave of definitive closure to communities across the nation. Mothers and siblings received the legal documentation required to finalize the affairs of their lost loved ones. The agonizing decades of waiting by silent telephones came to a definitive end. Families held proper memorial services, returning dignity to the names erased by bureaucratic apathy. Multiple jurisdictions utilized the exact details from the chalk drawings to close their oldest cold cases. Prosecutors drafted new indictments, though the aging perpetrator already faced multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Authorities transferred the decaying inmate to a secure hospital wing in Los Angeles County. The sterile medical environment stood in stark contrast to the endless highways he once roamed with impunity. On December 30, 2020, his body succumbed to natural physiological failure. He took his final breath at the age of 80. The medical monitors flatlined in the quiet room. His demise sealed away his remaining verified secrets for eternity. He faced no further earthly justice. The prison system processed his departure with standard bureaucratic indifference. The passing of the predator did not erase the enduring impact of his confessions. The Federal Bureau of Investigation maintains a permanent digital archive dedicated to the unmatched portraits. 33 specific drawings remain unidentified on the official government registry. These remaining faces serve as an open plea, demanding a name for every stolen life. The narrative no longer centers on the deceptive transient who exploited the shadows of the interstate system. The focus rests on the humanity of the women he sought to erase from existence. They possessed unique stories, vibrant spirits, and loving families who never stopped searching. The vivid chalk strokes capture the exact slant of a cheekbone or the distinct curve of a jawline. The artwork transforms abstract cold cases into stark reality. The women look back at the viewer from the digital screens. They demand memory and respect from a society that ignored them. Their faces stand as a permanent monument against institutional apathy. The truth remains etched in color. The legacy of these resilient women will outlast the memory of their attacker.